Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. I guess if the size of the panel is an indicator for interest in a topic, then we're off to a great start, because we have a great panel to be talking about this CO2 reduction opportunity from retrofitting. And what we've had today and yesterday and in the previous presentation is a lot about alternative fuels and different flexible approaches to future-proofing fleets and opportunities that exist from new technologies. But one thing that's quite clear is that probably the only no-regret move is to optimize energy efficiency of the vessels. And possibly that also includes retrofitting of existing ships. So without further ado, I'll dive straight into our panel to discuss this opportunity as well as the financing structures that could exist or are being developed. But first, possibly to set the scene, I'll ask Yamaguchi-san to start with what is the importance of retrofitting in particular, and is enough being done?
Okay, thank you very much. And so first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Maritime to set the retrofit as an agenda, because retrofit is not eye-catching like hydrogen or ammonia or new technology. But I'd like to point out 4 points that why retrofit. So first of all, many people talking about hydrogen or ammonia, but we have very big problem on the supply of the fuel. We have to rely too much on onshore guys for the supply of new fuel, like bunkering or tank or pipeline and so on. And we have to compete new fuel, supply of new fuel with onshore guys like utility companies. So that's nonsense for our market. So when talking about the retrofit, we can completely done in only the maritime sector. So this is why retrofit. And the second one is second point is that when we want to live with a comfortable world, we need plastic. And if we need plastic, we have to refine crude oil. And if we refine the crude oil, there should be big portion of the bunker oil. No one talking about who use this bunker oil if shipping or maritime sector completely transit to the hydrogen or ammonia. So this is why I'm talking about retrofit. So it's much better to use the bunker oil as efficient as possible. We need retrofit. And the third point, I just want to point out, because I'm Japanese, and this is kind of Japanese mentality. We call it in Japanese mottainai, but it means to use the product longer with good maintenance. It's much cost and energy efficient. So say, if you scrap 10-year-old ship, then create or build the ammonia-fueled ship. It sounds very great, but maybe it's much, in such cases, it's not energy saving and CO2 saving. So use the ship for longer with good maintenance. That means retrofit. And fourth, the last but not least, if you use the ship the longer, then the market of the retrofit is bigger, should be bigger. So there's economical reason as well. So this is 4 points. That's why retrofit. Thank you.
It's a very convincing case, thank you. And Adrian, I'll come to you with a similar question, and particularly, is enough being done from your perspective at MAN?
Yeah, so retrofit has always been of importance to marine industry to keep their ships up to date to have the competitive to have them in the competitive edge. To comply with the regulation, hazardous particle in the past, but also if the ship changes its operational profile, there's a need for optimization. But today when we sit here and talk retrofit, we're tackling a much, much bigger problem, and that is decarbonization. So this will add a regulation, much more regulation, a reputation, a collective determination to do something. And simply relying on the new build pace to refurnish or replace the existing old fleet is not enough, is too slow, we will not meet our target. And that's why retrofit becomes even much, much more important. Have enough being done. There are short-term solutions, EXI, EPL, where we can have short-term solutions to make the vessel compliant. But the forces are there indicating that more needs to be done. And in order to make the vessel future-proof, dual fuel conversion becomes necessary. MAN have been working non-stop to meet these demands from the market. We started with dual fuel conversion of LNG to 2015. We've done dual fuel conversion for ethane, for LPG, and I'm glad to share the news with you that we have orders for methanol retrofit this year. A lot has been done, but we are not there. We have a long way to go, but there are good forces in the market and we're slowly getting there.
Thanks. And already many options are starting to come through in what you mentioned. There's optimizing an existing engine, there's dual fuel conversions, and that's only from the engine perspective. There's a whole big menu of different options that owners could go down. So Roy, perhaps I'll ask you, what considerations do you think needs to be in mind to select the best one or best combination of different measures?
It's working already. I like the, Singaporeans love food, so you use the word menus, that's correct. Say you're hungry, right? You could go for a big main course. You could have 3 courses. Or you could have like meze, many platters, meze dim sum, something like that. So I think this is the problem right now. There are a lot of options out there. You mentioned some of them, the bigger ones. Those are the ones that require higher investments. Then the previous speaker, Jack, indicated a lot, mentioned ESDs, energy-saving devices. And the myriad of all the other things, the ALS, the wind-assisted propulsions here. Everything comes back down to economics. It's always a business case. So a specific technology applied to a specific vessel, based on its trading pattern and so on, it always comes down to that. So that is the make or break, and there's a lot of exploration going on right now. We are involved in a lot of feasibility studies, okay, working with the major ship owners. And I just want to mention, reply to Yamaguchi-san's point about life extension, and just share an anecdote. Meetings, 2 of the 3 large Japanese operators, you know who they are, 1, 2, 3, right? I'll not mention the names, but one of them flatly said, no retrofits, anything above 10 years, new build, will be offloaded, and we will build a new one. And the other one says, we are exploring business cases for vessels up to 40 years, and that will require a lot of retrofits. So that was closer to what Yamaguchi-san said. Thank you.
And you alluded to the business case and the economics as part of that. And so I'll ask a similar question to Rajbir. From your perspective at FPG, those considerations around the best fit, and particularly, how do you define the best business case for the best fit?
Thanks, Shane. I've been a financier most of my life, so unlike some of the others on the stage who are very good with the technical aspects of it, I'll try to put some numbers to it. I'd like to go back, pre-COVID, if you all remember even. It was 2020. There was this big event happening in this industry. It was called IMO 2020. Scrubbers were being put on ships. I was in a bank at that time. Customers would come and say, hey, listen, can you finance these scrubbers? What's the business case? Because at some point, people realized that making a green case for scrubbers was always a bit dodgy. So if you fast forward a couple of years, scrubbers really never took off. If you saw the curve, the scrubbers really never took off on day 1, 1st Jan 2020. And the reason was there was an alternative, and there needed to be a business case. Again, I go back to that. So that retrofit, if I can call it that, really took off in the late I'm thinking in 2021, essentially, when people saw the differential of the two fuels, the price spread remained fairly even at about $100. It's gone up and down since, but at that point of time, $100. You work the numbers backwards for the scrubber investment, that works out about 2 to 3 year payback. So I'm going to use that as underpinning the business case for retrofit. So if you have adoption in one kind of retrofit with 2 to 3 year payback, let's think of that as for, let's say, ESDs, right? So you put $1 million into a batch of ESDs, you get, let's say conservatively, you get 10% improvement. It's a mid-sized ship, the amount of fuel it burns, how many days it's operating. You work it all backwards, and basically it distills down to about 2 to 3 year payback. So if there weren't other complexities, and there are, I'm sure we'll discuss it, that in itself should be a no-brainer, because it's kind of like the scrubber investment. But of course, there are the complexities amongst others. Is it transparent? Do we know do we really get the 10%, or do we get 15 and then there's some margin for error? And there are many others. So building a business case relies on is kind of reducing the maximum amount of risk and movement and volatility in a lot of these numbers. But I'll leave it there with that thought.
Well, that's a great thought to pick up on, because measuring that effectiveness is super important, it's clear. So how do we go about trying to quantify that once we have installed them, or perhaps just before install? And perhaps I'll come back to you, Roy, on this point. How effectively are we able to measure the impact of these retrofits?
You have to measure them manually. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of inquiries and orders for installing flow meters. Such a simple thing. Such an obvious thing, simple thing. It's the evidence that you need, especially not only to calculate CII, but to correct the CI. Correction factors are very important. So that's actually the most basic way fuel efficiency and advantages of any ESD you installed is actually measured and proven. The other way, of course, is sensor. So there is sensor technology that automates a lot of the data collection, computes it, and gives you a nice graph. You don't have to manually collect and calculate yourself. So these are the two ways, yeah. Straightforward.
And Adrian, I think from your perspective, can you add to that?
Yeah, definitely. The effectiveness can be a certain side. So we know what the investment is, and we know how much CO2 we reduce. We know the operational cost, and the uncertain cost is how future-proof this vessel becomes, really. And this has made the owners, not all, to go from thinking downstream, only what happens inside the ship and how much the ship burns and emits, to a broader perspective and think well to wake. And this is where the dual fuel conversion comes back on the table again, when it comes to effectiveness of the retrofit. And we had the previous panel as well that the EU fuel is also coming up, trying to look at a broader perspective. We can no more focus on the efficiency of the ship itself, but we have to have a collective determination to see how it, in the bigger picture, affects and CO2 emits. If we burning a alternative fuel which is made on the vessel, which is being made not so environmental friendly, then it just the effect goes away, right? So we need to collaborate. We need to look at the bigger perspective, and this is how we do the. We need to look at the effectiveness of the retrofit, I believe.
So say we have a good idea of how effective a device is, and we've also gone through that process to select the best one and something that we think we've built a strong business case around it. Let's talk a bit more about how we finance that, because there's a lot of challenges in this space, given that it's not new. Financing retrofits and retrofits in general have been around for decades, frankly. So Stephan, I'll bring you in, and particularly on those challenges around retrofit financing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, as Rajbir knows, as the bankers here know, banks love first-rank mortgages. And these are not available when you do retrofit finance, because there's an existing post-delivery financing in place, And everybody knows second lien financing is complicated, it's difficult, and it's also expensive. And I think the second challenge is that a lot of investments are needed. There are a recent statistic that every second ship needs retrofitting to reach the IMO decarbonization targets in the next decades. And the third challenge is that not many ship financing banks doing retrofit finance. But actually, maybe after the panel that could change.
Well, let's hope so. But in fact, I'll go to Yamaguchi then from a non-commercial bank perspective then on not only those challenges, but then perhaps what are these opportunities that are starting to emerge?
Okay, so I'm always thinking how to finance the retrofit. So the first problem is a collateral reason. So if we finance the retrofit, but retrofitted equipment should be taken away from the existing lender as a collateral. So that's the first problem. So one thing I'm thinking is to not as the senior lending, but as some kind of the equity type of money is needed to introduce the retrofit. So fund investment would be one of the good solution. And also, second problem is the incentive program. So in Japan, there's so many ship owners there, but they have little incentive to introduce retrofit because they don't want any additional costs to pay. Because when retrofitted, then the rewards should be going to the operator side. So one thing I'm thinking is to set the fund and to introduce the retrofit for free and pay back by the cost or energy saving or part of the energy saving by the operator. So we create this kind of the scheme so that we can introduce the retrofit in the world. I understand, as Roy said, but to quantize the energy saving by the particular equipment would be very difficult. I understand. However, when many people talking about the hydrogen or ammonia, and there's so many problems there, and everyone say innovation would clear them all. So why not retrofit? That's my question. Thank you.
I think it's a very interesting perspective there on like a fleet-wide program, because that then touches on the various different strategies that could be in place, whether we target a single vessel or during its refinancing period, or whether we can retrofit and provide financing just for that retrofit. So Rajbir, if I bring you in on this, because I know we've been having a lot of these conversations on your perspective on what strategies there are to go through this retrofitting.
You'd think that retrofitting would be the easiest answer, but we've come across a lot of complexity. We're in the process of raising a fund to try and finance ships and energy efficiency improvements on those ships. And I kid you not, between investors and ship owners, it's a delicate balance trying to play that. And one of the key things, as Yamaguchi-san said, is invariably people want to get the return but not want to take the risk. And therefore, you're going to start with senior secured, and then you work with that. So I suppose the one way to do it is you're not going to bite off the whole pie in one go. So you start where you can. And I think that's maybe the key thing to do. So you start with maybe senior secured, and you top it up with certain retrofit financing packages that can, that's how the scrubbers were done eventually. And then you move towards, I like Yamaguchi-san's idea, but what you need to do if you want to create a fund that is only financing the impact related to the retrofit, and you want to drive the cost down, because otherwise it's priced at equity and nobody wants it anymore. If you want to drive the cost down, you have to do it in a manner whereby it's very clear that the cash flows related to the energy efficiency are then assigned to somebody who's providing the financing for that. And that becomes a challenge, right? Because it's one big pot of cash. But can you do it through time charter arrangements for certain, as I said, you bite off as little as you can. That doesn't cover the whole industry, but can you do it through time charter arrangements? You had the index-linked charters, remember that? Where you could price in the benefits of certain efficiency improvements. And you got pools, right? And pools are in the business of assigning points to people for certain kinds of vessel and how efficient they are. And that's pricing it. So you got to find a way to do that. But I suppose overall, one needs to be creative around it, apart from the more straightforward senior secured plus the retrofit.
Stephan, I saw you reacting a little bit while Rajbir was speaking. Is it the same perspective from you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, your boss Shane was here yesterday on the stage, Lin Lu, and said the banks shall create bankable products for the decarbonization projects, to reach the decarbonization targets. And I'm really happy to answer today that we created these solutions and there are solutions available. There are no new solutions via funds, and also the banks can play a major role here. I think the easiest solution is if you have an existing post-delivery financing in place, go to your banker, ask for an upsizing of the facility. And then normally there's a better CO2 efficiency of the vessel, so the market value goes up, and so there's no actual effect on the LTV. Then the second solution is if you have a ship owner with a fleet of a number of ships, then also the ship owner can check, okay, are there some unencumbered vessels, and to offer, for example, to put mortgages on these vessels for the retrofit, for the security, for the retrofit finance of other vessels. And then another solution which we very much like is ECA financings, especially when you purchase retrofit equipment from one country, then you can approach the export credit agency to provide cover for these financings. And yeah, as a bank, if you get a Euler Hermes cover, a Exfin cover, then normally you do not need a ship mortgage then attached. So this is a big benefit of these ECA financings. And at the same time, also the insurance company recognize, okay, shipping is quite an interesting industry and there are good companies. So we are currently in talks with them also to create some private insurance covered financings. And I think also what is very interesting, we talk a lot about sustainability-linked loans, on green loans, and these financing can tap in that space. So I'm quite optimistic.
So as with all panels, we have we script these questions in advance. So I'm now going to ask a question that no one's seen, and particularly as none of us are ship owners or operators, I'll ask, what is the next immediate step that a ship owner should do if they come to you just after this panel? What would you tell them? Adrian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so building up a business case is not easy. We see that, we struggle with that. But if we add the parameters like what is the loss to take my ship out of operation if it's not compliance? What are the benefits of doing the retrofit and extending the life of the ship? And if all these forces, we cannot look away from them. There are forces, very strong ones in the market, regulatory as well, to decarbonize. If you look away, when the green methanol is there to bunker and we don't have an asset that can bunker, all the other ones are benefiting from low taxes, subsidies, and so on, and we are a little bit behind this. This basically affect the competitiveness, right? So I think the investments come with a great risk, but doing nothing, in my opinion, is even a greater risk.
Totally
when there are forces in the market that goes that way. We see the trend, but no one has predicted the future, right? We see the trends.
Absolutely. Yamaguchi-san, same question. What's the next step? And by the way, I forgot to mention, but we're almost out of time. So it'll be 1 or 2 next steps only.
Okay, so I understand many operator, ship owner understand the importance of a retrofit. However, say mass media or governmental people, they tend to work on the eye-catching things like hydrogen or ammonia or something like that. So we have to, or operator or ship owner have to work on or cultivate such mass media or governmental people. So that's the first step, I would assume.
Rajbir.
Sure. Just given that we're a fund, I think most big ship owners probably don't even know my name, or maybe from my past life. But definitely small, medium-sized ship owners, you want to come to speak, please speak. I think the only piece of advice, if any, I would give you is, I think there is money on the table here. I think if you spend some time looking at it, you might be able to monetize that. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, as I said last year, also collaborate. Yeah, talk early to the suppliers. Yeah, they have smart solutions, and then see what's best for your fleet, and then talk to your bankers, talk to other financial institutions, and then yeah, it's possible to decarbonize shipping together.
Roy.
For those who don't have deep pockets, to have a demonstrator. It means to say that you have some vessel just to demonstrate technology and actually learn from it. For those who don't have deep pockets, learn from the best.
Very good. Thank you all very much for this. I think that it's clear to say that there's an urgency to retrofit, there are solutions emerging, and there's money on the table. So please do speak to these people afterwards and retrofit all your vessels. Thank you very much.